Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this big guy right here. This is the Spyderco Knives Subvert. This is absolutely more or less obscene, and I'm looking forward to doing the review. But first off, I got to give some full disclosure here. This knife was sent to me as a freebie from the manufacturer. Their condition, from Spyderco that is, their condition, as always, is that after I finish the review, do something charitable with it, which is just win-win to me. So after this will probably be a part of the next big charity giveaway, something like that. But it's a really, really beautiful thing that they're willing to do that. That said, I do have to, and I tell them as always, I'm talking about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, might be a gem, might be a junk, and in fact, they've gotten verdicts closer to both ends. So they're well aware of how things work, but we do have to assume this is the best quality controlled one ever, and I've done my best not to let that fact influence my review. So there you go. There's your full disclosure section. Next thing, size comparison. Yeah, this is big. Here we are against the Ontario Rat number 2 and your Ontario Rat number 1. Yeah, this thing's freaking big. The Rat 1 looks relatively tiny next to it. Here it is against your Spyderco Delica. There you go. And here it is against, I just realized I didn't have something on the table I wanted to have on the table for comparison. Here it is against the Grimsmo Knives Norseman, which actually, you know, insofar as anything looks like this blade, the Norseman blade does a little bit. And so there's a size comparison there. And here it is against my other token gigantic freaking knife. This is the Cold Steel Voyager XL, which is the only thing on my table that makes this guy look reasonably sized. So there you go. Next thing, a quick note on this guy. What the heck is this thing? So this is this is designed by a guy named Nati Amor. He's runs a company called Black Snow Customs, and this is based off of a custom model that he did called the Sabotage. Get it? Subvert? Sabotage? Okay. But anyways, the Sabotage has been it's a lust-worthy custom knife. You see these just beautiful Damasteel full dressy sorts of affairs out there. And Spyderco has made a big old production version of it, and that's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very, very interesting knife. To start with, I'm digging the wordplay naming. I absolutely 100%. To go from the Subvert to the Sabotage, and they did the same thing with the Spyderco McBee, which comes from the Jonathan McNee's Killer Bee Custom. I kind of hope this is going to be a trend, because I like some wordplay. Nice. But that's completely neither here nor there. Next thing, this has got a very, very unusual blade to it. Although it sits relatively low inside the handle, this is a big freaking blade. We can see here, if I throw this guy up against a ruler, this is coming in over 4 inches. This is gigantic. It's also a relatively thick blade here, coming in at, let me pull out my caliper here. Right quick, switch it back into freedom units, because we haven't picked good units as a country. 0.15 inches there, or what the heck. About 4 millimeters for the metric folks out there in the world. Regardless, it's a lot of freaking, thickness on there. But it is a big old chunk of S30V steel, which is a solid, good-to-go sort of steel. It's a very unusual blade shape in general, and it's actually a useful blade shape, because not only do you get some of the effects of a recurve, and one could argue this is actually recurved here, because there's just a little bit of pull in there. But you can also use this, just kind of dip this little area into, say, if you're trying to open up a package without cutting the contents, you can use this little kind of secondary edge down at the bottom there. And it's got a very nice sharpening choil here. I like the blade shape a lot. It's a little ginormous, but at the same time, I do like the blade shape a fair amount. Next thing, this guy has a nice clip to it. It is not a standard Spyderco hole pattern clip, though. You can see here it's kind of a weird clip. It's kind of curved off to one side here. It is, by the way, only one side mountable, which makes sense because they'd need an entirely different clip to switch to the other side there. Pardon me. But the clip works well, it's well positioned, and it hangs the knife in a way that makes it, frankly, a little nicer in the pocket than you might expect otherwise. And so I like that very much. Next thing, I like very much the fact that they've made this knife as a production version of a custom knife. This is something that, you know, a number of companies have been experimenting with, and, you know, I think a lot of Spydercos have been production versions of customs in the past, but especially Black Snow they're really hard to get. He's not making all that many of them, and so for Spyderco to work with them, that's great. And especially making something relatively unique like this and doing it as well as they have have here, that's a really nice thing, and it's something I hope we continue to see a lot of from Spyderco. If they can bring to bear their manufacturing power on some of these really nice pieces, that's great. Next thing, this is going to be a really nice host for customization. What I mean by that is that, you've got these big old thick G10 scales here, but I can imagine that they would be swappable for something like carbon fiber. Holy crap, carbon fiber would be amazing on this guy. Or even I've seen people use just RIT fabric dye to dye this black, and it becomes a whole new knife. Honestly, the orange isn't doing it for me, but I forget what that was, but somebody on Instagram dyed theirs black, and it was just like, oh yeah. And similarly, I can see a lot of people doing things like custom clips, etc. This is just a really, really nice host for those kinds of customizations, and I am pretty impressed by that. If these G10 can be swapped out easily, and I believe it can, ooh, that's going to do some nice stuff for the world. And so I like that very, very much. Next thing, on this guy, there were some really nice details here. It's based on a custom knife, and the custom knife has some nice details as well. But you get, for instance, this little area here on the front of the blade. When the knife is closed, you get this little beautiful, I don't know why, but I'm kind of a sucker for that, where the knife's blade follows the contours of the closed knife. It's a little detail, but I like it a fair amount here. You get the little swoopiness here of the liners going on. You have a little tiny raise up here in order to be able to unlock it easily. There's the scalloping going on here. There's also this little bit of scalloping here and here, which just makes it easier to get in at the Spidey hole. See? Little thunk here, and then that gets your thumb in there, no freaking problem. And in fact, you've got the same thing on the other side, such that you can very, very easily get in there with the other finger and pop it out, finger flick it out there. I like very much those little things. The contours on the knife overall are just beautiful, because you've got this little area. Note that this little area is sticking up above the G10 here. So it's a very conscious decision. You've got a swooping line here, swoop, 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 as well as the overall consistent line along the top arc here. And then the blade, especially with the grind coming down, not coming all the way to the top, all the way through the knife, it looks really great here. I'm loving 100% just the details on this guy. And frankly, I find the blade shape to be rather attractive. That's maybe not universally shared, but I really do like that. And so there were a lot of really nice details on this that show it was started its life as a high design custom knife and is continuing to some of that lineage there. Next thing, this guy is not a flipper knife, which is generally speaking a good thing. Spyderco is not quite flipper detent ready quite yet, so I'm liking seeing that. But not only does it open beautifully with your thumb, and it is, by the way, running on bearings in here. I believe they were ceramic, but it's running on bearings. But not only that, but it's also a really nice flicking knife. It's hard to do this with a camera and a table. Like I literally am working within like a foot of space here, and this is a giant freaking knife. But you can very easily finger flick this guy out, and that makes this very, very easy. You can also do the thing where you grab the handle and let the knife pop, or grab the blade, let the knife pop open if that's your shit. But you can very easily get in there ambidextrously and flick this guy open with your middle finger or index finger, whatever. That's very nice. And then finally, on the good side, this knife is sort of in that category where I consider it to be like playfully insane. There are knives that are very clearly having fun, and I feel like this is one of them. This knife is just kind of a little crazy, but you know what? It's crazy like a fox. What I mean by that is it's just like it's crazy, but it's to good ends in terms of design, in terms of just, I don't know. Maybe this is entirely subjective. Maybe I'm the crazy one here, but there's a level to which this is just like completely out of the norm, but it's pretty compellingly so. So to me, at least, that's the good on this guy, is that it's playfully insane. It's got ambidextrous opening and flicking to it. It's got some nice details. It'll be a very nice host for customization. I like seeing production versions of custom knives. Knives. It has a nice clip that hangs well in the pocket. It has an unusual blade, and the name comes from wordplay, so no argument there. On the great side, this is beautifully made. Taichung does good work, the Spyderco Taichung factory, that is. But this is yet another example of just how much good work they are able to do. Because you get things like this pivot, which is very, very nice. You get the handles, which are beautifully machined. You can see here, this is not just the natural texture of the G10. No, they have machined in these sorts of grooves all throughout it, which make it just very, very nicely textured, both for the hand and just for the eye. It has just a beautiful blade. There's some internal skeletalization. The action on this guy is absolutely absolutely gorgeous. I mean, seriously, it's drop shutty 100%. This is a really amazing production version of the custom. This is really, really impressively done. This right here is another nice, and you know what, we don't have to prove anymore that Tai Chung is doing good work for Spyderco, but this is another really nice thesis here. Because, you know, honestly, wow, they've done good work. And so, although the price on this guy is $300, at another level, this is a lot of knife, and it's just, this is beautifully done. So I got no complaints with it. They've just done such a nice job with this knife. It's like, yeah, we're good to go here. Absolutely beautiful. So to me, that's what's great, is that this is just really, really well made. On the bad side, to start with, the stock on this is super thick. It is ground relatively aggressively, so it gets down, especially down to, at this level here, to a reasonably thin edge. It's not, you know, oh my God, but it's pretty good. But still, this is going to be prohibitive, and especially up here at the tip, you can see here, it's pretty thick there. This is not going to be great if you're doing any kind of fine slicing work. Mind you, this is not exactly the definition of practical working knife, but you know what? It's a really thick one. And I feel like the knife might be a little bit better with thinner stock. Maybe I'm crazy here, but to me, that's a bit of an issue. Next thing, unfortunately, this is a Tai Chung detent, and what that means is that any time that you have, because there were some silly municipalities that do tests like, you know, oh, it's a gravity knife if you can flick it open like that. So right there, I was not touching anything. All I did is I used this really, really thick, heavy blade stock here, got it moving a little bit, and that overcame the detent naturally. Now, is this a weak detent? No, not necessarily. I can do something like this, and it won't pop loose. But if I really give it a concerted flick, absolutely it will come open. So if you have that kind of an issue, if you've got those kinds of stupid laws, this is something you're going to want to avoid, as frankly as anything with stock that's this thick, because that makes it very vulnerable to that kind of a test. Not a big deal, but it's a thing. Next thing, this has a non-standard Spyderco clip, and in fact, the clip kind of feels like the thing on this that's most underdone. I can see a vigorous market for aftermarket clips for something like this, because I think, especially if it were in the blasted titanium, it might be a little bit more compelling here. And given, though, that it's a non-standard Spyderco clip, it's not your general hole pattern that they're using, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. That would give you a lot more immediate options for a different clip for this guy. It's also relatively shallow carry for what it's worth, but this thing is beefy enough that carry is already, well, strugglematic, shall we say. And actually, let's just jump into the next thing. This knife is thick with 2 capital C's. Holy crap, is this knife thick. It is thick as heck, especially towards the backside here. I mean, I like them thick, but damn, this is insane here. And, you know, this is good, ergonomically speaking. It's very, very solid ergos in the hand, and even for my relatively small hands, this really fills it. It fills the hands up. It's good in that domain. I guess I could have put that in the good, but holy crap, does this thing have some junk in the trunk. And so as a result, when I was carrying this around, it was really abundantly obvious that I was carrying this guy around. I felt like I had a full-on, you know, big old, fixed blade in my pocket. This is the widest knife this is the widest knife on my table at the moment, and frankly, yeah, this is outdoing the Buck 110. That's some pretty serious business. So the thickness here is something that's going to be problematic, especially given that right at the back or at the top of your pocket there, it's going to be out there, and so you're going to feel this guy. This is not necessarily something I enjoy carrying as a result of that. But then again, I'm also not a huge knife person, so there you go. Next thing, the orange G10 is not I don't know, it's a bit of a weird choice to me. Maybe they're going after the hunter's market here. Maybe they just really like the color orange. I have no freaking idea. Maybe orange is the new black. I don't know. But the simple fact is that this is a controversial choice. I showed this to my wife, and she said, "Why the heck would you get it in orange?" It's like, well, that's the only thing I can do. It's the only option. But it does look great in black. And can you imagine this knife with a beautiful marbled carbon fiber there? Oh, yeah. I mean, and we know that Tai Chung can do good for carbon fibers, so, be still my beating heart. Like I said, though, this knife is just crying out for custom scales. And so at that level, they are going to be supporting a vigorous custom market on this guy. Next thing on the bad side here, this guy is a little bit scary when swinging closed. What I mean by that is that usually on a knife like this, you have a flipper tab going in here that will kind of prevent this guy here. I'll use the Norseman as an example. The flipper tab will prevent this guy from closing directly onto you. And in this case, what you have here is the sharpening choil. And what that means is that this relatively unsharpened part of the blade is going to hit your thumb as you're closing this guy, allowing you to get your hand out of the way there. But you have here a very, very, very free-falling pivot here, coupled with nothing to stop it from getting to your thumb. So most of the time, if I'm closing this guy, I've actually found myself doing it on the horizontal there, not just for the review, but because that way it won't come flying down onto my finger there. That's honestly a little tiny bit scary. And so, yeah, you're going to want to keep that in mind. It means it's a beautiful drop shot action, but that beautiful drop shot action is borderline terrifying when there's no tab to stop it from coming down on your thumb there. And then finally on the bad side, and some people are going to disagree. Somebody like, oh my God, I love it. In fact, a viewer of mine actually sent me a picture of his hand with this knife, and it was just like, it made this guy look like a mini knife. And so like, if you are a huge human, this is right. This is you. This is your choice here. But the simple fact is that this is a gigantic knife. And I feel like that's not just me being dramatic. This is big. And it's heavy too. It's coming in at 6.25 ounces for about 4 inches of blade. So that's gonna be, and this is the level of hugeness at which I think it starts to be a liability for people who aren't Nick Shabazz. 4 inches plus is gonna be illegal in a lot of places. This kind of thickness is gonna be impractical in a lot of places. It's just a knife that's ginormous. And I would love, love, love to see this guy made in a smaller size. This guy in a 3.5-inch version, like the mini Subvert. Oh man, although the mini Subvert would just be the normal size Subvert, and the mega Subvert would just be a machete. So look, I don't freaking know, but the simple fact is this is a pocket machete. And coupled with that thickness, coupled with the weight, etc., that's going to make this guy kind of a little bit more of a niche product, I think. And so to me, at least, that's what's bad here, is that this is huge to the point where it starts becoming impractical, both in terms of stock thickness, in terms of thickness overall, in terms of weight, and in terms of blade length. The blade is a little scary swinging closed on those bearings. The orange G10 is an odd choice. It is super, super thick. It is a non-standard clip. The detent is going to fail any of the stupid centrifugal tests that you get in weird places. I guess it passed okay there. And it's got super thick blade stock on there. On the final conclusion front, there's nothing ugly here. So on the final conclusion front, this isn't really a knife for most people, I think. It's huge, it's silly, it's thick with 2 or maybe even 3 capital C's. It is not the most practical thing ever, and to top it all off, it's $300. But the simple fact is that it is a beautifully made knife. I find myself, I initially saw this guy, when it was released and thought, oh, that's going to be kind of funny. But the simple fact is that I really like this knife. I mean, not in the sense that I have any desire to keep it. No, not at all. But in the sense that I really respect what's been done here. This is Taichung doing what they do best, which is making really nice designs well. And with this grind on this blade, with this nice machine finish on here, with the overall action on it, it is an execution worthy of the custom design. This is a profoundly well done knife, and I really, really appreciate that a lot. And so, like I said, there's a lot to make this undesirable, and you absolutely do need to be the right person for this knife. Even as good as it is, as well, well made as it is, as much good as there is here, you need to be the right person. You maybe need to be a huge human for this to make a lot of sense, or just a small human who's a bad fan of huge knives, whatever. You might want to be a fan of the guy's work, or at least certainly of this design. You have to want something this ginormous, or maybe you want something this customizable, and you have to have the $300 in your pocket. I am not one of those people. I am none of those things, as a matter of fact. But the thing is, so this is not going to stick around for me. It's going to disappear from the table. And, I'll respect it, but it's not like, oh, the one that got away. But the thing is, if you are that kind of person, if you are looking for something huge, if you are a big fan of the design, if you do want something ginormous, or you do want to try and customize this, and you've got the $300, I really think this would be a pretty compelling choice for you. This is so profoundly well done that I can imagine that, if this is your style, it might sabotage your ability to carry anything else. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you. Really weird knife, really big knife, but profoundly well done. Hope this has been interesting. Have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.